So you guys ready to play a game? Damn right, brother. I was born ready. Great, let me just open up my trusty dice box and oh my God.
What is it?
My dice, they're gone.
Gone? Who would steal your dice?
It had to have been one of us. Well, don't look at me. A simple tabletop game, like any other, becomes the scene of a heinous crime. A game master's dice stolen, his powers stripped away. Was this theft random, or was this only a single piece in a larger, more nefarious plot? A plot that ends in murder. Murder? Dude, no one died. Someone just stole my... As I said, murder. But who is the killer? Mike, the player who can never get to 8th level and once threatened to whoop his game master's ass. Todd, always cast as the worst player ever, his life now imitating art. And Dweebles, a man torn apart by not knowing his real name. A man who has also proven himself to be a cold-ass villain. Who is guilty? Find out on today's episode of Tabletop Mysteries. Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today I want to discuss one of my very favorite types of adventures, and that's the investigative game, where our heroes are tasked with trying to solve a mystery. Maybe it's a murder, or a theft, or trying to explain some strange event, like why all the plants in the park suddenly died, or who keeps mailing severed fingers to the mayor. Mystery games can be a lot of fun, but successfully running them can be very different than running your standard tabletop adventure. There are a lot of pitfalls that game masters who aren't used to them can fall into. So I'm not aiming this towards any specific system, so if you want to run a mystery game using D&D or Star Wars or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. The same general concepts are going to apply across the board. Now, some systems are better suited for mystery games than others. Call of Cthulhu or Gumshoe, those are designed specifically for investigative games, but they're hardly the only systems out there that can do it. Most of this is going to be some pretty solid advice for running tabletop games in general, but all of it is going to be solid advice for running mystery games in particular. And none of this should really be considered hard and fast rules. Think of it more as experienced advice. And like with any advice that anyone ever gives you as far as how to run a tabletop game or just writing in general, there are going to be exceptions. I can personally come up with a couple of good exceptions for just about everything that I'm going to tell you. So if you want to try something out that is an exception to the guidelines, I don't like using the word rules, if you want to try something out that's an exception, that's perfectly fine. Good luck. However, it is best to know what the potential pitfalls are. That way you can prepare for and try to avoid those if you're trying to do something that doesn't really follow the normal set of advice. Okay, disclaimers out of the way, let's get this thing started. The first thing that you need to do when running a mystery game is to decide the plot. Mystery games are very story-based, and while with many other types of games you can simply wing it through certain details, you can't wing it through the plot of a mystery game. With mysteries, the players are going to be picking apart the plot, searching it for clues or any inconsistencies. And a simple plot hole, because you hadn't thought it through all the way first, can quickly lead to your game spiraling out of control and lead to a lot of frustration, leaving you and your players dissatisfied. Before the game starts, you as the game master should already know the who, what, where, when, how, and why of the plot, and now it's the hero's job to follow the clues in order to piece all of that together. If you or your players are new to investigative games and you're worried about the thousands of crazy directions that they might go in order to solve it, you might consider what's called a closed circle mystery. These are mysteries that all occur in a very limited space with a set number of suspects. Agatha Christie was well known for these, with And Then There Were None taking place in a mansion on a remote island, Murder on the Orient Express on a snow-trapped train, Death on the Nile on a steamboat in the middle of the Nile River. A closed circle can focus the attention into a limited space, allowing the player characters to kind of pick through it very deeply without, running off down all the different little rabbit trails that one might find in a more open environment. They're usually best to do for either newer investigators or for shorter games. Next, know your party. Figure out why these characters are involved and what draws them into the mystery. And what is it that they can do? Game masters need to be aware of any skills, powers, spells, or tech, or anything else that's at the player character's disposal and prepare for that accordingly. You don't want your mystery to suddenly instantly be unraveled because your player characters employ divination or speak with dead. Instead, write the scenario in a way that the player characters can either use these tools and powers to glean a little bit more information, but they don't glean all of the information through it. But don't drop down some sort of blanket, well, that just doesn't work today. unless you can give a solid reason why their spells or their cell phones just aren't working all of a sudden. These are tools that the player characters have. They might have chosen these player characters because they wanted to have access to these specific tools, so you should let them use their tools. But don't make it a situation where they can accidentally unravel the entire game just right away because you hadn't prepared for it all the way through. So if they are going to speak with the dead, have it where maybe the victim doesn't know who killed them, but they can give the PCs just one good clue that can help push them into a direction where they can then go further and further into the mystery. That way you're giving your players a reward for using their tools and not just blocking them because you don't want their spells or technology to work that day. Having their powers or their cell phones just not work for no reason at all, that's really just good at pissing off your players, so you should be working with their powers and abilities, not against them. Next, once the game starts, tell the player characters that this is an investigation. Both the players and their characters should be aware that there is a mystery to be solved. This one sounds ridiculously obvious, but it is a very common rookie mistake to have the fact that the PCs are in a mystery game be a mystery itself, where the player characters are supposed to slowly unravel that there's a mystery afoot. The problem is that if the players don't know what the plot is and they have no direction or no objective, they can quickly get bored or frustrated. So let the game be about solving the mystery and not just the players fumbling around until they figure out that they're in a mystery in the first place. Now, one useful tool when not just revealing that there is a mystery is to also add a ticking clock aspect to it, something that gives the mystery urgency. Something like the killer will escape when the city gates open in 12 hours. And if there is a ticking clock aspect to it, the player character should also be aware of that. That way time becomes critical. Next, let's talk about clues. Clues are the treats, the food that feeds your PCs and keeps them going. Without the clues, the game starves. If the player characters do something, they should be rewarded with a clue. These clues are the keys that unlock more possibilities, such as a receipt for a tailor shop might unlock the tailor shop as the next location that they can go investigate. When mapping out your mystery, be sure that the clues lead the player characters to the locations that you want them to go, or convey the important information that you want them to have. Check your plot for what's called and then, such as they go to the warehouse and then they go to the lighthouse. No, you should make it they go to the warehouse where they find the clue that tells them that there is something important at the lighthouse, so now they should go check out the lighthouse, where one clue leads them to the next one and doesn't require some sort of incredible logic leap or mental hurdle in order for them to figure out what the next step should be. Well, yes, we like to emulate characters such as Sherlock Holmes or Poirot. The player characters are not them. Holmes and Poirot can make brilliant logic leaps from scant information because they're storybook characters who are written that way in order to figure it out. Make these clues clear and simple. Trust me, your players are already going to make them more complicated as is, but how do you find clues? Well, we do it like anything else in a tabletop game, through roleplay and skill checks. Now, some systems out there, like Gumshoe, they don't have any rolling to find clues. There's no failed rolls in order to find them. That way your players can just focus on what the clues are telling them, rather than the whole task of trying to find the clues in the first place. But for all the other games out there, you're going to have some skill rolls. Now, I recommend that you really diversify what skill rolls are required in order to find clues. Don't just make it all, spot or perception checks. Give it a lot of diversity. Social skills in order to talk to people, whether that be, charm or intimidate, maybe seduction, lock-picking skills for some, maybe some strength for others. Some clues might be acquired through violence. PCs are usually pretty quick to turn to violence, so Game Masters should know in advance what clues are best acquired by which means. That way we can incorporate a lot of different player character skill sets, and all the players in the group can feel very involved in the investigation. When interviewing witnesses or suspects, some NPCs are going to lie, either to protect the villain or protect themselves. Maybe they're hiding something that they did, a theft or an adultery, an embarrassing situation. Maybe they're being forced to against their will because they're being charmed or they're being blackmailed. Whatever it is, the NPC is going to hold back some information, possibly even mislead the player characters. That's perfectly fine to do, but you should also include a means that the player characters can discover that this person lied to them, and maybe as a way to then go back and get the truth from them. Such as, if the NPC is being blackmailed, have the player characters then discover a letter or some incriminating photographs or something that tells them that they had a secret that they were holding back on, that they deceived the PCs, and now the PCs
can go back and confront the NPC and get the full story. Now, one common problem that happens is when the player characters miss a clue. It happens, and it can happen for a lot of reasons, but now the game is stalling because they're out of leads and they don't know where to go next. The Alexandrian blog has a fantastic piece of advice on this and what he calls the 3-clue rule. Essentially, his suggestion is that game masters should offer 3 clues for any direction that they want the player characters to go. Reason being is that the PCs might miss the first clue, either they fail to roll, or they just fail to talk to the right person or open the right drawer, or maybe they did find the clue, but now they have misinterpreted it. So having 3 clues is a good safety net to ensure that the player characters get the important pieces of information that they need in order to keep the game on track. It's generally safer to offer the player characters too many clues than it is to offer them not enough clues. So my suggestion is to also widely diversify the way these 3 clues can be found. Maybe one of them requires social roles in order to find it, while the other one requires awareness and perception or tracking or something like that, while the third one might just require that they say that they're going to read the wall calendar on the wall, and there's the clue right there in front of them the whole time. So if you want to say have them check out the shady bar down by the docks because there's a plot point there and that's going to keep the game going, have 3 unique clues that can send the player characters to the shady bar to keep the game on track. Again, this all completely depends on how your game system works, as far as what type of skills and spells and everything else there are, as far as what abilities that your group in particular has. You want to write the scenario in a way that feeds off the strengths of what it is that your player characters can do, but multiple clues is a great suggestion in order to get the information across that you want to relay to them in order to keep the game going. Next, avoid linear plots, also referred to as the railroad. So let's say you start your adventure and the clues lead the player characters to location 1, which leads them to location 2, then to 3, and then to the finale. There's no way to bypass any of these or change their order. That is a linear plot. Instead, consider what's called a diamond plot. The PCs start the adventure and immediately get the choice of possible locations to explore further. They can do them in any order that they like. Maybe they have to do all of them to get the information they need to solve the case, and then they can head on to the end. So the choices quickly spread out and then bottleneck back down towards the ending. That's what's called the diamond plot. Alternatively, we could start and have 2 different choices, neither of these choices being critical themselves. The PCs go with location 1, which leads them to location 3, which leads them to 5, and then to the conclusion, case closed. However, they could have also opted instead to go to location 2, which led them to 4, and then to 5, and then to the end. Or maybe once they got to location 5, one of the player characters said hey, let's go back and check out location 1. So they go back, find location 3, which leads them to 5, which they already knew about, so it just confirmed their suspicions, and then on to the end. There's a ton of different ways you can do this. I think the point is pretty well clear at this point. The big thing is that at the beginning of the mystery, or just after the beginning of the mystery, you give the player characters several options as far as different leads that they could follow, and if the adventure does begin with only a single clue, like a single scrap of paper with a word on it, have it be that right after that, that clue then leads to multiple branches of possibilities to give lots of choices and options for the player characters. One big thing that a lot of game masters get wrong when they're offering a lot of different doors as far as possibilities of what their player characters could do at the beginning of the scenario is to make sure that none of those doors happen to be the solution to the mystery. What happens if they open that door first and it's where the bad guy's hideout is, and now they've solved the case and the game is done? Or they walked into that situation completely underprepared for what it was that they were going to find there. Either way, it's going to lead to a short game and dissatisfied players on both sides of the Game Master screen. One way that I've seen mystery plots outlined, and I really wish I remembered where I saw this because I'd like to give them credit for this, but they outlined it the same way you would do a dungeon in a normal dungeon crawl adventure. So your heroes enter and immediately are presented with 3 directions that they can explore. They have doors that they need to open, or there's just open passageways that they could walk through, and there's no right answer as far as how they can do this. They might go in, wander around, following clues, missing others, and eventually they're going to make it to the finale, closing the case. Now, rooms like this, ones with no exit, or like this one, behind a secret door, I see these as optional information. They don't do much in the way of leading to further clues, but they're nice for giving the player characters a bigger picture of other details like that that aren't essential to the plot. Think of them a lot like you would Easter eggs. One complaint that I've had about a lot of pre-published scenarios is that while the game master is given all of this great information as far as the backstory and NPC motivation as to why they're doing what they're doing, there is no way in the course of the adventure that the player characters could ever discover that information. So now it's just something that only the GM has and only the GM will have access to. So I like the idea of having maybe these little spokes that come off of the plot that really don't necessarily push the investigation further, but they might explain as to why certain things are going on, and it just kind of makes an overall better story. But if they miss that information, no big deal. They can still close the case and they can still have a great time, and you can always say, well, there was the answer there, but you just didn't find it. Okay, so you've prepared your game. It's plotted out. It is suited perfectly for the player characters that you have. It gives lots of options with redundant clues to make sure that they don't miss anything altogether. It keeps everything on track. Everything is ready to go. Good job. Now all you need to do is to prepare for failure. As any seasoned game master will tell you, no plan survives first contact with the player characters. And no matter how much you might have prepared beforehand, just expect the unexpected. Now, maybe they still missed or misinterpreted all the clues that were offered to them. Maybe they came up with some sort of weird rabbit hole possibility because you missed a plot hole or something, and now they've just made one up themselves. Now they're charging off into Crazy Town with a head full of conspiracy theories. Whatever it is, your game has hit a snag and is now in danger of spiraling out of control. No worries. This is a job for improvisation. One of the big reasons that I always try to prepare everything that I can before a game begins is because I know that in the end, improvisation is going to be used as the caulk that tries to keep this thing watertight. And I'm going to need all of the improvisation that I can, so if I can prepare for something before the game, I'm going to prepare for it, because in the end, I know I'm still going to have to caulk it. So here's a few tips that I've learned. Be flexible with your plot. You can employ what I refer to as floating clues, meaning that if the PCs miss that scrap of paper in the Duke's bedroom that was supposed to send them off to the abandoned castle, and now they're searching the Duke's summer home, which you never expected to be a possibility, but somehow they convinced themselves is the best place to check, why not move the clue to the summer home that can send them off to the castle? Or if, let's say you can't move the clue for whatever reason, why not just come up with a completely new clue that sends them to the castle, which is where the rest of the adventure is, or something that then sends them back to the bedroom where they missed that clue before. Something that says there was more information and you missed it, go back and search again. Then they can go back, find the clue, and get the game back on track. It's more important that you keep the game engaging and fun for all your players than allowing the game to just grind to a halt and now everyone's frustrated because you convinced yourself that you have to stick to the plot that you had beforehand. You need to stick to the plot that you need for the current situation. Sometimes that means changing the original plan. Maybe your villain can react to what the player characters are doing. Maybe the PCs are getting too close and now they have to make some sort of move. And the reaction that they do causes a new clue that allows the player characters to pick up on that and try to catch the bad guy. Maybe they murder one of their accomplices or one of the other suspects, which tells the PCs that that wasn't the correct bad guy, and maybe it also tells them that that person died because the PCs hadn't solved the case fast enough. However, avoid the bad guy just showing up at the end and holding a pistol on the PCs and then monologuing what their evil plan is before the heroes inevitably defeat them. That's an unfulfilling way to end an investigative scenario. Your players know that you handed them the answer in the end, and now everyone, including you, is disappointed by that. So have the villain react in a way that brings the PCs 1 to 2 steps away from the villain, but doesn't just hand them the villain with a big bow wrapped around them. When you're plotting out your scenario in advance, every single spot that requires some sort of action or some sort of puzzle piecing together by the player characters, ask yourself the question, what if they fail? And either correct what happens if they fail or start thinking of a contingency plan in case they do. Now, some games out there like Call of Cthulhu do have contingencies built into the mechanics, such as what's called the idea roll, which is a way of getting the game back on track track if the player characters have lost the plot thread. I've always disliked that Call of Cthulhu refers to that as the idea roll, because that's a term that's used in other games that means something completely different, so that leads to a lot of confusion. Love the concept of it, just really don't like the name that much. But with rolls like this, where a player character can make an intelligence roll or something else to kind of get a line thrown to them in order to get the game back on track, I do like them a lot in theory, but do not rely on them as part of your plan in order what to do in case the game goes wrong. Think of them kind of like an ejector seat. If you need an ejector seat, damn right you better use the ejector seat, but don't have that be in your normal list of first round options that happens in case the game starts going bad. Personally, I consider it a bit of a failure on my part if we have to use one of these rolls to get the game going again. And that might just be my issue, because if the game has hit a point that we have to use a roll like that in order to bail them out and get the game back on track, to me that means that I failed it at some critical point. So if your game mechanics do have a roll that allows them to get back on track, definitely keep that as an option, keep that in your toolbox, but don't rely on that as something that you should be able to use in case of emergencies. Instead, plan the game that way you don't have to use it. Finally, let's look at red herrings. These are intentionally misleading clues to divert attention away from the real culprit. While red herrings are certainly an effective tool that's used in your favorite detective shows or crime novels, where they send the heroes off in the wrong direction for a while before they figure out that it's a false lead, and then they come back and solve the case just in time, they don't work that well in tabletop games. Again, the characters in those shows are written specifically where they're going to figure out that it's a red herring just in time in order to make it in their 45-minute time slot or whatever. But with your players, red herrings can become extremely confusing and quickly cause the game to spin out of control. Players are essentially their own red herrings. Trust me, they're going to come up with enough crazy false leads on their own without any help from you. And there's a big difference between giving your characters a confusing case that they're then supposed to rule out possibilities and solve than it is to give them a confusing case and then intentionally try to mislead them by giving them more confusing information. Now, as I said earlier, there are exceptions to everything, and I have seen and I have used very effective red herrings in games before, and the ones that worked the best were the ones that were basically very short, small diversions. So the player characters might have had to have made one step, and then they could quickly rule out that that was not the correct way to go. And the most effective ones were ones that also included a clue that was able to push the game back on course. However, most red herrings, even if you're going to make them kind of brief little spokes off to the side that can be quickly ruled out, they can easily confuse and frustrate your players. Sometimes your players might not accept that the red herring was a false lead. Now they're going to convince themselves that everything else is the red herring and that this is the only way to go. And they're going to stick to that path blindly, no matter how much later clues they find that say that that's not the correct way to go. And then the player can become angry or frustrated once they find out that that is incorrect, and they're going to blame you because it's your fault that you intentionally misled them by giving them a red herring. So it's one thing if your player characters fail to solve the case. That should always be a possibility that they could fail to solve the case. But it's another for you as the game master to intentionally set it up for them to fail by giving them red herrings. So use them with extreme caution if you're going to use them at all. Your job as a game master is to help deconfuse the situation by offering them clues in order to untangle this web of mystery, and it's not to just intentionally confuse them more. Anyway, that is it. Hopefully this will help some game masters out there that have kind of been hoping to run an investigative game, or maybe their players were asking them for a mystery game, but they didn't really know how to start doing that, and it can be intimidating at first if you've never run one before. Mystery scenarios can certainly be more challenging to prepare and run than other types of games out there, but I also find them extremely rewarding. Just remember to prepare, be ready to improvise, and most of all, have fun.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff like game reviews and how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, gamers, you have a great day.
I can't believe you shot me.
Oh, I didn't shoot you. You were shot, and then I was holding a gun. But that was all just a red herring.
But if you didn't shoot me, then the culprit is still out there.